There is a word almost everyone knows: Armageddon. The last battle. The end of the world. Most people assume it is a symbol, a metaphor for something too large to picture. It is not. Armageddon is a place. In Hebrew it reads Har Megiddo, the mountain of Megiddo. And Megiddo is a real hill, standing over a real valley in northern Israel. You can drive there. You can stand on it. Below that hill, the ground opens into a wide green plain. Farmland. Wheat. Irrigation lines. It is one of the most peaceful views in the country. It is also the most fought over ground in the Bible. The valley has a name: Jezreel. And long before anyone wrote about a final battle, this valley had already swallowed a king on a mountain, a farmer in his own vineyard, a queen at an upper window, and an entire royal house in a single morning. Then, a century later, God told a prophet to name his newborn son after it. Not after a hero, not after a promise, after this valley. Why would God ask a father to hang that name on a child? That is what we are going to find out. Open a map of ancient Israel, and you will see a country of hills, ridges running north to south, narrow passes, hard travel. Then, across the north, one long flat break in the stone, the Jezreel Valley. It runs from the sea near Mount Carmel down toward the Jordan River, wide, level, and watered. Two things follow from that. The first is food. This is the best farmland in the country. Deep soil. Reliable springs. The second is armies. The great highway of the ancient world ran from Egypt up the coast and on to Damascus and Mesopotamia. To get through the hills, it had to squeeze through a narrow pass. The pass came out here, guarded by Megiddo. So every empire that ever wanted to move north or south came through this valley. Egyptians, Canaanites, Philistines, Arameans, Assyrians. They fought here because there was nowhere else to fight. The name itself holds both halves of that. Yisrael. It means God sows. A planting word, a farming word, seed going into good ground. That is the name history hangs its battles on. Israel's first king learned it the hard way. Saul brought the army down and camped by the spring at Jezreel, with the enemy massed on the other side of the plain. He climbed the ridge above it, Mount Gilboa. He did not come back down. The valley took its first king, and it was only getting started. About 170 years later, a new dynasty took the northern kingdom. Omri, then his son Ahab. Their capital was Samaria, 20 miles to the south, up in the hills. Safe, defensible. But Ahab built a second seat, here, on a low ridge at the eastern lip of the valley, above the spring. For a long time, nobody knew what that place looked like. Then, in 1987, a bulldozer working near the site cut into something old. 7 seasons of excavation followed. What came out of the ground was not a pleasure palace. It was a fortress, a huge rectangular enclosure, a double wall built with chambers inside it, 4 towers pushing out from the corners, cut stone at the base, boulders behind, mud brick above, and on the exposed sides, a ditch cut down into the bedrock. This was a military installation. A place to hold horses, chariots, and men right at the mouth of the highway. It also had a short life. Built, used, and burned within roughly a generation. So when the Bible puts Ahab at Jezreel, it is not putting him at a summer house. It is putting him at the gate of the nation's front door. That is where Elijah met him. After the fire fell on Mount Carmel, the sky went black, and the rain came. And the prophet ran ahead of the king's chariot, all the way down the valley, to the entrance of Jezreel. The confrontation between the God of Israel and the gods of Ahab's court did not end on the mountain. It followed the king home. Next to the compound there was a piece of land. It belonged to a man named Naboth, a local, a farmer. He grew grapes. Ahab wanted it. He was reasonable about it at first. He offered a better vineyard elsewhere, or a fair price in silver. Naboth said no. Not because the price was low, because of what the land was. The Hebrew word is nachalah. It is usually translated inheritance, but that is too soft. It means an allotted portion, the specific piece of ground assigned to a specific family when Israel entered the land and meant to stay with that family forever. The law behind it is blunt. The land is not to be sold permanently, because the land belongs to God, and the people are tenants on it. So Naboth was not driving a hard bargain. What happened to him after that? We followed in the Elijah episode, the one asking why Elijah stood beside Moses and Jesus. The link is in the pinned comment below. The short version is that a queen out of Tyre took the vineyard the way Tyre took things. Letters, a staged assembly, hired witnesses, and when it was finished, there was no one left in that family to claim the ground. By the following morning, it belonged to the crown. And Elijah walked into that vineyard with a sentence for a king who had let his wife do his stealing. Blood for blood. The house of Ahab, finished. And Jezebel, by the wall of Jezreel. Ahab tore his clothes and went about quietly, and God delayed it. Delayed. Not canceled. About 12 years pass. Ahab is gone. His son Joram sits on the throne. Far to the northeast, Israel is losing a war. Damascus has a new king, a hard, capable man named Hazael, who took the throne of Aram by removing the man in front of him. We followed his rise in the last episode. At Ramoth Gilead, east of the Jordan, Joram is wounded in the fighting. They carry him home to recover. They carry him to Jezreel. His nephew, Ahaziah, king of Judah, comes north to visit the sickbed. Both royal houses are now inside the same walls. Back at the front, a young prophet arrives with a flask of oil, finds an army commander named Jehu among the officers, pours the oil over his head, tells him he is king, and that the house of Ahab is finished, and then, as instructed, opens the door and runs. Jehu takes the chariots and drives west, down the valley road, and the text says he drives like a madman. And here the archaeology and the story lock together. A watchman is standing on the tower at Jezreel. From that ridge he can see for miles across flat ground. He calls down that he sees a company approaching. A rider is sent out to meet them. The rider does not come back. A second rider is sent. He does not come back either. The watchman calls down again. The driving looks like Jehu. So the two kings do the confident thing. They harness their own chariots and ride out to meet him. They meet on the plot of ground that used to belong to Naboth. Joram calls out one word. Peace? Jehu answers with a question about the queen mother, and it is not an answer at all. Joram wheels his chariot around. He does not get far. His body is thrown onto Naboth's ground, and a sentence spoken 12 years earlier lands on the exact square meters it named. Ahaziah runs south, wounded on the road, and dies at Megiddo. Then Jehu rides up to the compound. Jezebel hears him coming. She paints her eyes, arranges her hair, and goes to an upper window. That image is not an invention either. Carved ivory panels have been dug out of royal buildings across the ancient Near East, showing a woman's face framed in exactly that kind of window, a stock image of court power. She meets him as a queen. She calls him by the name of an old usurper whose reign lasted 7 days. Her own household does not defend her. And by the time Jehu has finished his meal, there is nothing left in the courtyard to bury. The dogs by the wall of Jezreel, word for word. In the days that follow, letters go out to Samaria, and Jehu's purge runs through the whole royal family, then through the house of Baal. At dawn one morning, the gate of Jezreel is no longer a gate. It is a display. The valley has taken a second dynasty. Now for the complication. In 1993, in the far north of Israel, excavators pulled a broken piece of black basalt out of a wall at Tel Dan. Then two more fragments. It is a victory monument, written in Aramaic, almost certainly set up by Hazael of Damascus. It is the inscription that first gave us the phrase, House of David, outside the Bible. But it says something else too. The king who set it up takes personal credit for striking down the king of Israel and the king of the house of David, Joram and Ahaziah, the two men who died in this valley. According to 2 Kings, Jehu killed them. According to the stone, Hazael did. There are three ways scholars read that. The first is simple. This is a victory monument. Kings inflate. Hazael took credit for the collapse of two enemy kings because the collapse suited him and he had started it. The second is linguistic. The verb on the stone can mean struck or defeated as easily as killed. And Hazael's army had in fact struck Joram. That is why he was lying in Jezreel in the first place. The wound came from Damascus. The chariot only finished it. The third goes further and suggests that Jehu moved with Aramaean encouragement, and that Damascus regarded the new king of Israel as its own instrument. Each of these is a real position, argued by serious people. But notice what none of them requires. None of them removes Jehu. Not one reading of that stone puts Hazael's chariot on Naboth's field. What the stone gives us is not a correction. It is a second camera angle, the view from Damascus, where the fall of Israel's king was a foreign policy success, and where a valley full of Israelite dead was worth carving into basalt. Now move forward about 90 years. Jehu's dynasty is still on the throne. Israel is prosperous. Borders are wide. Trade is good. And God speaks to a prophet named Hosea. The command is strange. Marry, have a child, and name him Jezreel. Because in a little while, God says, the blood of Jezreel is coming upon the house of Jehu, and the kingdom of Israel will end. Sit with that. A child grows up in a small town carrying the name of a massacre. Every time his mother calls him in for dinner, she says the word. But there is a problem underneath it, and it is one of the sharpest in the Old Testament. Because in 2 Kings, God commends Jehu for what he did here. Well done, the text says. You have carried out what was right in my eyes. Your sons will sit on the throne to the 4th generation, commissioned and now condemned. How can the same act be both? There are three serious answers. The first, he went too far. The commission covered the house of Ahab. Jehu also took the king of Judah, the princes of Judah, and anyone else standing near the throne. And when the killing was over, he kept the golden calves. The chapter says it plainly. He did not turn aside from the sin that had corrupted the kingdom from the beginning. He tore down a rival god and kept his own convenient one, obedience with nothing underneath it. The second, Hosea is deliberately overturning the older verdict. On this reading, Israel's own scriptures are auditing themselves. A later prophet looking back at violence carried out in God's name and refusing to let it stand unquestioned. The third answer is grammatical, and it may be the most interesting. The Hebrew does not necessarily say, punished for the blood of Jezreel. It can just as naturally read, I will bring the blood of Jezreel upon the house of Jehu. Not the reason. The method. On that reading, there is no contradiction at all. God is not reopening Jehu's file. He is telling his descendants exactly how their own reign will end, the way they began, in this valley, in blood. And that is precisely what happened. Jehu, then his son, then his grandson, then his great-grandson, Jeroboam II, under whom Israel was richer than it had been in 2 centuries. Then the 4th generation, a young king named Zechariah. He reigned 6 months. He was struck down in public. And the oldest readings of that verse put it at Ibleam, a town on the southern rim of this same valley. The dynasty that was born on Naboth's field died within sight of it. 4 generations, exactly as promised, exactly as warned, the valley kept the accounts. So the name is a sentence. Except Hosea does not leave it there. A chapter later, the same prophet takes the same word and turns it over. Jezreel. God sows. And God says, I will sow her for myself in the land. And I will say to those who were not my people, you are my people. The word that meant a field full of the dead becomes a field full of seed. Not a different valley. The same one. That is the pattern the whole Bible keeps running. The ground that swallowed everything becomes the ground where something is planted. Which brings us back to where we started. The last book of the Bible names one place for the final gathering of the kings of the earth. Har Megiddo. The mountain of Megiddo. The hill at the western end of this valley. Long before that, another prophet had already described a great mourning on the plain of Megiddo. Grief so deep that a whole nation would weep on this ground. So the writer of Revelation is not reaching for an exotic symbol. He is reaching for the most obvious address in Israel, the place where kings fall, where dynasties end, where the armies of the world have always come, because the road leaves them no other option. And the name of that place, the name God chose to attach to a child and then to a promise, is still the same name it always was. God sows. The last battlefield in Scripture is a farm. Jehu's line is finished. The valley has been paid. But look at the 4 generations again, and at the third of them, Jeroboam II, the most successful king the northern kingdom ever had. Borders restored. Silver everywhere. Ivory in the houses. And in his reign, while everything looks like blessing, God calls a prophet and sends him east, to a city on the Tigris, in a kingdom that is not yet an empire. The city is Nineveh. The prophet gets on a boat going the other way. Why would a man run from a mission that succeeded? And why send mercy to the one nation that would eventually erase Israel from the map? That is where we go next.